Welcome to The Survivor's Voice, where resilience meets hope. I'm your host, Angie Sador. I'm sitting here with our producer and editor, Christina Elder.
Thank you so much, Angie. It's definitely a different experience being on this side of the room.
Yes.
But I am really grateful for the opportunity to talk to our listeners a little bit. I just want to say really quick that this show has really changed me hearing these stories. It's a real reminder of the realities of this world, the horrifics of the world, but also that healing is not just about surviving. Healing is about being heard, being validated, being understood by people.
Yeah. And that's what The Survivor's Voice is all about.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I love that we've been able to create a space for our guests where they can be heard and validated and understood.
Yes.
I'm actually really excited and very humbled by the feedback we've gotten from our guests actually about how great of an experience they've had.
And we've had such just a variety and a range of guests on our show. I mean, we have gone through trafficking and medical trauma, church trauma, war. I mean, just so many different things. And maybe some of our listeners are thinking about telling their story.
That would be so awesome. If that's the case, I would like our audience to know we would be honored and privileged to be able to be the platform for them if they so chose to tell their story.
Yes.
We also believe that every single story can help someone else.
Yes.
That's our whole purpose here. Our listeners should know that you don't need to be a speaker. You don't even necessarily need to be past your trauma. You just have to show up. So if listening to this is maybe making your heart beat a little faster, maybe that's a sign that you need to contact us, that maybe you can help somebody else with your story.
If you feel led to speak, we're ready to listen. So reach out to us at booking@thesurvivorsvoice.net. Your story matters here because your voice is your power. Special thank you to Bowman Carter for creating the original music for this podcast. You can find Bowman's music by searching for Bowman Carter on Spotify and on YouTube. We've attached his links in our description of today's episode. Please show him love and support. Today on The Survivor's Voice,
beating him to the point where all 8 of us children were trying to pull my dad off of him. What a savior he had been for me the whole time. And as a victim, sometimes you don't think anyone deserves to have forgiveness.
Yeah. The content shared on the Survivor's Voice podcast is intended to be informative and inspirational. We are not licensed therapists, counselors, or medical professionals. The views expressed are based on personal experiences and should not be considered professional advice. If you are in need of mental health support, please consult a licensed professional. Before we begin, this episode may contain discussions of trauma, abuse, or other sensitive topics. Listener discretion is advised. We don't recommend playing this show with young children present, and we encourage you to prioritize your well-being. Welcome to The Survivor's Voice. We are so glad that you're listening or watching today. Today, we get to interview a great person in the community, someone that I have gotten to know. It's going to be a real treat, and I'm so glad that you tuned in. Her name is Anna Cheney, and she is a transitional life coach. She's also a mom, and she just has a wealth of wisdom and knowledge because of things that she has experienced in life. And so I'm so grateful that she's on our show today. Thank you for being here, Anna.
Well, thank you for having me, Angie. What a treat it is to be a part of this wonderful outreach that you have going across the world.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, our viewers don't know you, so just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I have been married for 40 years. And
Amazing.
I have 3 grandchildren and 3 adult sons, 2 sons and a daughter. Family is everything to us. But those 40 years, believe me, have been very transformational.
I can only imagine.
Lots and lots of marriage support and working through things. And, my story is part of that. And having the dear man that I had beside me was a treat to get me through the most difficult times in my life.
There's nothing better than a good man.
Yes.
Yeah.
A good, godly man.
Yes.
Right?
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, before we dive into your story, let's just go back a little bit. Tell us about your upbringing, what was your childhood like? And then we'll dive into what you want to share today.
Sure. I am the youngest of 8 children. And
I didn't realize you were the baby.
Yep, I was. And of course, they all thought that I was the spoiled brat.
Of course.
Got the favoritism. I didn't have to go through anything they had to go through, right?
Right.
But I did witness a lot.
I bet.
And what I witnessed was a lot of fear and terror and violence and hurt and pain in our household. And so it was kind of like you never knew what was going to happen for the day, so you lived in a very unsafe environment.
Okay.
And so my parents this was their second marriage, so we were a blended family. So my dad brought in 3 children, and my mom brought in 2, and then they had 3 together.
Wow.
Yeah. And although I lived out in the country, I was born in Germany because I'm an Army brat. Yeah.
Oh,
my
okay.
parents traveled. My mom went there with 8 kids, came home with 10 because she took 2 of my nieces with us along that journey. She was caregiving for them for a season. So she was a trooper, but a broken trooper as well.
Okay.
And that showed up a lot in my childhood, her brokenness, her hurt and pain that she had endured as a child as well. But went from Germany out to a little town called Rogue River, Oregon, and we lived on 5 acres. And so I did get to have the farm life, the horses, the cows, the chickens, the vegetable garden, all of that, which I think was a divine appointment by God for a lot of us to have kind of refuge, to live out in that space. And it really calls to me.
I bet.
And recently my husband and I just bought 5 acres in Coeur d'Alene out in Cougar Gulch area. And I cannot tell you how soul serving it has been for me to just be out and about in the wilderness again.
I believe that.
So that was a snippet of what it looked like, but from the outside, it looked like a pretty functional family. But on the inside, there was a lot of, my dad was very violent. He had post-traumatic stress, and he had a lot of skeletons in his closet as well that left him pretty broken. And so anything that was a little too stressful in the household, or he just wasn't handling it well, things like we had a 2-story house and someone shut the back door a little hard and it shattered a window, running in and out. And he had told us many times to not slam that door, but when that happened, he decided to show us what it was like to have every single window in the house broken.
Oh, my gosh.
So he threw things through every window in our 2-story house. And that was very frightening. And it was very frightening if one of my brothers got into trouble, because they didn't just get a spanking, they got a beating.
Yeah.
And so it was very hard to hear. I can still hear their voices sometimes, the sheer screaming of that. And I just can't even believe that they can function in life after having that terror on them a lot.
Did your mom have to endure?
My mom did endure some beatings, but mostly it was the emotional stress that she broke under as well. Also, that violence kind of rippled into another situation where my sister's boyfriend brought her home later than expected. It was a foggy night. My dad confronted him when they walked into the door, and he probably wasn't super respectful, but my dad completely unleashed his anger on this young man, beating him to the point where all 8 of us children were trying to pull my dad off of him. I remember only being 9 years old and jumping on his back to try and help hold his arms with my other siblings too. And we finally freed the young man from my dad, and he ran away.
How old was this kid?
He was probably 17 years old.
Oh my gosh, what did his parents say?
Nothing. Nothing was done.
Wow.
Nothing was done. His parents were kind of out of the picture. He was a foster kid. He probably told nobody what actually happened. So that was, another, traumatic piece. So, but I did not know until I was about 12 years old that also, in addition to the violence, that there was a lot of sexual abuse happening in my household.
Oh, shoot.
I found out that my sisters had been enduring it for about 10 years. And I did not know that either. Although as my story unfolds, I found out that I too had been sexually abused, but I didn't really experience that until about a year after my dad passed away. Then I think subconsciously my body was able to relax and release the fear of what could happen if I said I knew that happened too. And so I always was trying to fix myself. I didn't know what it was that was broken in me.
Yeah.
But that was the case. And the reason why I can't remember is because I found out consequently that I actually was drugged at the time.
Oh my gosh.
And I think it was because my dad was just so shameful, and I was his biological, the others were not. And I think that he was trying to hide that and didn't want me to know his own weakness. And so it just all played out. But, Angie, that doesn't define me. It just is a stepping point for me to be able to help others.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Did your mom know what was going on?
My mom said she did not know what was going on. She herself was incest in her own father, who, to be honest, I couldn't even believe that my grandfather was had the possibility of doing something like that, but he did, and he said yes, he did, and so did my uncles as well. So I don't know if my mom was just trying to block everything out. My sisters said she had to have known, but my mom still, to her deathbed, said she did not know.
Wow.
So at 12, I found out that we weren't all the same siblings, that we came from different. So secrets were really big, and image was really big in my household. So you didn't know these things until you accidentally found out about them. But it wasn't until I was about 21 years old that I actually knew about the sexual abuse to my sisters. And from 21 until I was, until this day, I'm still trying to help my sisters with that hurt and pain that
Oh my gosh.
they continue to relive.
They've carried it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what makes you different than your sisters that you were able to?
Because I went and got a lot of help. So that brings me into, that was my childhood, my young adulthood. I was still involved with my parents' life. My sisters, at the time that they told their secret, they no longer could really have a relationship, definitely with not my dad, sort of with my mom, and they had a relationship with me. So I was in the middle.
Oh my gosh.
So I wouldn't say playing both parts, but just being there for both parts. And I'm so grateful that they allowed me to, even though I was still loyal or protective or caring for my parents. Because at a very young age, I really realized that hurting people hurt people.
Yeah, it's true.
And so, and by the grace of God and Him being in my life, I just was able to continue to roll over and give that forgiveness. So when my parents, about 9 years ago, needed some serious medical help, neither one of them were well enough to take care of the other. And my siblings all agreed that either they need to go into an assisted living or Anna can take care of them. Because
Wow.
she's the only one that could do that. Because at that point, they figured they were the only ones who had endured the sexual abuse part
Oh my
of it.
gosh.
But they didn't realize how much the emotional and fear-based abuse had affected me. And I don't even know, Angie, that I realized it until I moved my parents into my house.
Oh my God.
So this...
I didn't realize you'd moved your mom and your dad into your house.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Both my parents into my house. And I remember we were sitting at the dinner table, my husband and I, my mom and my dad. We were trying to, work on how do we coexist with each other. And I wasn't talking. Well, you know me, Angie. I talk all the time, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't talking for like days at the table or when we were all together. And my husband finally said, "What is wrong with you? Why aren't you talking?" And I said, "Children are to be seen and not heard." And he's like, "What in the world are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. Why did I say that?" And he's like, "We've got to go get you some help." And I realized I had moved the monsters into the house.
Oh.
And I didn't feel like I could go back because I said yes and I committed to them. So God completely orchestrated this ability for me to, like a day before this training was starting in Boise, it was called Ventana. It's transformational emotional intelligence training. And the first weekend was happening one day later. And my husband, I was like, "Gosh, I can't come up with that money in that amount of time." It was like $1,500. And he's like, "We'll figure it out. Go."
Yeah.
So I went, and the first weekend is 12-hour days, powered packed, and it was called Discovery. And that's where you go through your entire childhood.
Wow, what perfect
But
timing.
It was perfect timing. Still not addressing the sexual abuse to me because at that time I still was suppressing it. But I went through all the other things that happened in my life. And then the next weekend that you go, it's called Breakthrough. You're able to actually break those chains and leave them and rise up and be the person that you're supposed to be. And that was hugely transformational for me to then be able to, not always easy, but be able to have my parents in my home and for me to be able to be their caregivers. And at that point at Breakthrough, once I finally was able to break through the chains that I felt like I was under, all my focus is I want them to see Jesus in the end of this. Now, my parents didn't grow up going to church, but I had been going to church since I was 8 years old. So Sunday school buses picked me up. My parents would drop me off. They knew that I was the religious one in the family. Yeah. I wasn't preachy, but I just was the presence of it, and I always attended. And so both my husband and I just said, if they can see Jesus in the end of this, if at the end of their life they go to heaven, it will have been all worth it. But we did not know it was going to be an 8-year journey.
Wow.
So I continued throughout that whole time doing one transformational after another. And my husband ended up going and doing the same emotional intelligence. It was not a faith-based program. But once he did it, I did it because we both realized we needed tools. My husband was even having problems with anxiety when my parents first moved in, and he's like, "What's happening?" Well, it brought up some of his childhood too.
My gosh.
So we both went and did that. And at the end of us doing this, that was like over a 2-year period of time, us working in just that area. We both looked at each other and said, and then there was God, because this was not a faith-based. Well, just a couple weeks later, we're sitting in church, and up on the screen, they're announcing this program called Untying the Knots of Your Heart. And we're like, what? Transformational, going through your childhood into who God wanted you to be, how he wants you to reparent you, and then living the life that he purposed for you.
Yeah.
Was there. And so we like almost ran out of the sanctuary when it was over and signed up. Well, 4 years now, we've been also facilitating groups called Untying the Knots of the Heart, where we get to walk people through their past and how God wants to have them heal and lay that down and reparent them. And that first time that I took Untying the Knots of the Heart, during the section where they're really explaining to you who God is, who Jesus is, who the Holy Spirit is, I broke down and I realized what a savior he had been for me the whole time.
Yeah.
As a child into my adulthood. And it just made me so fall in love with God, and to realize that he too was crying when I was crying. He too hurt because of the pain that someone else chose to do upon me. That was never his intention for my life, but it was just life.
Yeah.
But he could use it. And now he can use it. And it is now my life's calling to help people walk through that journey where they have harmony in their life, where they can emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually heal, and then make beautiful music, right, to the world.
Yes.
And so the Untying the Knots of the Heart has been really a pivotal part for my husband and I to work through our past and to walk people on the same journey. Now back to my parents. My dad was with us for 5 of the 8 years that we were caregiving. And my dad passed away in 2020 and from COVID. And he stayed a whole month in the hospital, but they allowed him to come home for his last few days, which was phenomenal.
Unheard
but
of.
I am so grateful to the Lord because those last even 3 days was phenomenal at being so many people speaking into his life about his next journey. And during the 8 years or 5 years my dad was with us, my mom told him, we're going to church with Doug and Anna every week. And the very first week, my dad said, I think I'll try it next week. And she said, oh no, you're going. And ever since that week, he'd be the first one in the shower and sitting on the side and came. He could barely hear, but he just wanted to be there. And so when he was on his deathbed, I asked him when he came home from the hospital, I'm like, we got a second chance to know for sure, because even though he had been going to church with us for 5 years, he would never publicly say, I accepted the Lord.
Yeah.
So I asked him, Dad, are you ready to do that? He was like, let's just don't go there right now, honey. Well, then my nephew got in his face and said, Grandpa, we're going to talk about this, and I want to walk you through the sinner's prayer. And so he did, and my dad acknowledged it. Well, in the quietness of my dad kind of going in and out of consciousness, being in a coma, I just went and sat in the room by myself with him. And he had not spoken for like 12 hours. He was really just there. And all of a sudden, he lifted up his hand to the side that I was at. And he said, wanted me to take his hand. So I took his hand. And he said, I am grateful. And then that is the last I heard of his voice. And I'm so grateful. And so we were able to sing him into heaven. And forgiveness was there. And yet I still didn't know that his pain had been inflicted onto my pain until a year after he was gone.
Oh my gosh.
But yet the forgiveness road was already established. It was just me being able to release that experience, which was so important for me to get it out of my body, get it out of my mind, and have really peace.
Yeah.
So then 3 more years, my mom is with us just by herself. And boy, did she jump into church. She was reading her Bible. She wanted to be at every function there was possible. it was like she got a lease in life because my dad was gone as well. And I will never forget the gift in walking by her room and seeing her kneeling at her chair praying with her oxygen on, and just knowing that she was going to the feet of Jesus, not for herself, but I know she was praying for all of us, all of her grandchildren, great-grandchildren, everybody. It was so incredibly soul-serving. And we recently have been talking about how valuable hospice is.
Yeah.
And they came in the last 7 months of my mom's life. And it was so good for me because for 8 years I had been the leader, the caregiver. I wasn't able to be the daughter.
Yeah.
But those last 7 months, just having someone else be responsible gave me the opportunity to just be the daughter.
Yeah.
And it was so great. So we went on trips, and I was able to get her to church. And again, in the same room, in the same scenario, my husband and I singing worship songs to her and just ushering her into heaven. So both my parents died in our home, and it was just glorious to know that God was taking them into their arms despite all that they had done, the hurt and the pain that they have done in their life. I just really had a glimpse of how saddened God was that their pain was used to hurt others, but that he died for those sins as well.
Yeah.
So it's just led me to become a life coach, to help other women specifically through that. And then my husband and I do ministry together to help people go through that. And it's not always about abuse. It can be about, sexual abuse as a child. It can be about all kinds of things that are just off in their life, that are not allowing them to have peace of mind or harmony in their life. So when even one area is off, that's a clanking cymbal. And they don't know why they're restless and unsettled. They just know something's not right.
Yeah.
And that's what has brought me to this life journey of my life purpose. The one person can help them just to the other side of that best version of themselves, because I've been given that gift too, to show up in the best version of myself too.
What a restoration story. Like, we talk to a lot of people on the show that have been really traumatized and mentally, emotionally, and physically injured by their parents. But you got to go to the other side where there was restoration, where there was forgiveness, where there was healing. Like, and your siblings didn't get to experience that at all. Like, I can only imagine when it hit you that you would move the monsters into your house, and how God took that and changed it all for good. You just don't hear that very often. What a blessing.
It was a blessing, and he orchestrated so many people and so many avenues for us to continue to see that. It wasn't easy, Angie. There were days where I hated them, and then there's days that I loved them like Jesus loves them. And I just had to keep moving forward. I had to let something go and move forward to the next step, or go get the next helper that could help us along the way. And definitely, it was hard on my marriage for a while, but God intervened there, and now my marriage is even stronger because we just leaned into God and had to pray together a lot. Two hearts praying as one became our motto. That's how we had to get through this. And my husband had known my parents since he was 14 years old. So it was like his second parents. And so he was just equally as invested and close to them too, and wanted to see and have the peace of mind that they weren't damned to hell for the rest of the life for the choices that were made because of the hurt and pain that they had been inflicted to. But that they actually get to sit at the feet of Jesus and be in final peace.
Yeah. How are your siblings? How did your siblings cope with their death, or what happened with them during all of that?
Some came to the funerals, some did not. Some were thankful. They felt like it was over.
Wow.
Some of them are still hurting. Some of them are protecting themselves. Some of them have addictions. Some of them just really don't have the peace that I've been able to experience.
Yeah.
And I've tried to speak into their life, but I don't think I'm the one who will be the person. So I just continue to pray. Some of them are not speaking to me anymore. And I just continue to just pray for their own healing, that they find their peace along the way.
Are they upset with you because you embraced your parents?
Some of it, out of the 7 siblings, one is just upset about thinking there was financial gain rather than a heart of
Gotcha.
healing,
Yeah.
which there was no financial gain. My parents didn't have anything to have financial gain. But, that's just another symptom of what happens when you're not dealing with your own hurt and pain.
Sure.
And then the others are still speak to me, but it's distant. And I think it's just because I've been very vocal about being so thrilled that my parents are in heaven and have received forgiveness. And, as a victim, sometimes you don't think anyone deserves to have forgiveness for what they could do to another person.
Yeah.
And I get that. I really do get that now, because when I was actually able to experience what I had been, or God had been protecting me from, going through that, I did completely fall apart because, but that again is transformational. I have taken that little girl, and she is at the feet of Jesus in a little house with a white picket fence around it. And there's other children in the yard playing, and they are all there for him to care for. So the adult Anna was able to walk away from her and leave her in the care of his arms than, in the safety of his place. Yeah. That's another level of transformation that has been very helpful for me, to be able to speak to that little girl and put her in the safest space ever, which is at the feet of Jesus in his arms. And walk away and then be the woman that I was intended to be.
Yeah.
Rather than carrying that around like a ball and chain around my ankle, always being the victim of that life.
Yeah, it's a choice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Is there anything else that you want to share with us?
I just employ anyone who is carrying around this to find it wasn't the one thing that fixed it for me. It was multiple things.
Yeah.
So do that, and then go do this, and then go do that. And most of all, spend time with the Lord.
Yeah.
Allowing him, don't hate him for allowing this to happen to you, because there was a purpose for it.
Yeah.
So my heart would just go out to anyone who is feeling stuck, has a clanking cymbal, to do what they can to go have others help them walk this journey, because you honestly cannot internalize it and walk the journey alone.
Totally.
You need other people to help you get to the other side.
Yes, absolutely. And it's amazing how if you just walk through one door, there's so many other doors that are waiting to open.
Absolutely.
But it just takes that step.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like to envision it that they're standing on one side of the river, and on the other side is the life that they want. But you know what it's like to cross a river.
It's rough.
Right.
Slippery.
Yeah. Rocky.
Yes.
The drift is really, the water is deep, and you got to take steps, careful steps, to get to the other side.
Yeah.
But that's how you get to the other side, is you keep persevering and moving forward. And sometimes you're just stuck there. That's when you reach out and you grab someone and say, help me get to the next step that I can make it. And so that's why I feel that coaching is super important. because I think coaches do a really well job at helping people move forward rather than staying stuck in the story. I could tell this story over and over and over again, and what is it going to do to me, Angie? It's going to make me sick. It's going to make me depressed. It's going to make me have anxiety. But when I choose to let it go and move forward, then there's hope. There's faith.
Yeah.
There's love. There's forgiveness.
Yeah. People do get stuck in the story.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then there's a way of telling the story where it lessens the power over you instead of just like being in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 I'm so glad you came today.
I am so glad I got to
I
tell
learned
this
so much
story.
more about you. I had no idea.
Yeah.
We have some things in common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank
I
you.
appreciate you so
Angie.
much.
Thank you. I appreciate you too.
Safe Harbor is dedicated to helping survivors of trauma find healing and restoration through support, resources, and community. They provide hope for those affected by human trafficking. Visit safeharborforfreedom.com to learn more or support their mission today. Thank you so much, Safe Harbor, for supporting the survivor's voice. Next week on The Survivor's Voice,
the story that kind of begins with just, like loss.
When I saw her name like on my cell phone, I knew.
Grieving that loss was definitely tough, and it still is tough.
It's like hard to deny that
Yeah.
that it was his timing.
thank you for listening to this story on The Survivor's Voice. I'm your host, Angie Sador, reminding you that every survivor's story matters. A heartfelt thank you to our incredible listeners for your support and to the survivor community for your courage and resilience. You are the heart of this show. Special thanks to our producer and editor, Christina Elder, to Bowman Carter for our beautiful song, and to Dan Wise with North Idaho Podcast Productions for bringing these powerful stories to life. Your dedication, talent, and most importantly, your hearts make the survivor's voice possible.